sur Open and YouTube. Going live. And we are live. Hello everyone. Nice to see you here. Hello. Hello Olivier, hello Guillaume. Hello all.
Hello.
Hello. So we have like already 40 people in the room. So nice to see you here. Hawida. Hello, hello Colly. Hello again. So nice to see you here. So welcome back to the day 3 of and last day of the Wannabe CTO Bootcamp. As we wait for everyone to arrive, you know the rules. Please come down in the chat. Come and say where you are coming from. For the new one, perhaps say hi and present yourself. Perhaps your position. Are you already CTO or wannabe CTO, manager, lead? We want to know everything about you. So really say hi in the chat. It's a place to collaborate. It's a safe place. So basically, you can ask everything. And we have people from my team, Alice and Chloe, here to answer you and to guide you through this session. Hello, hello. So I'm Caroline. I'm the founder of 15 Tech. We're a platform that provides connection for women in tech and allies. So we are on a mission to reduce the tech gender gap, and we are really passionate about that topic. And on 15 Tech, you can match with peers, find the right resources for you, and when it's needed, really find the right companies who are really playing the rules of transparency with their gender data, their D&I policies, and also really companies that really want to see you growing in your career, progress in the organization, and of course, not leaving tech. We know that 1 in 2 women is leaving tech now due to discrimination, due to toxicity. We have a social and collective responsibility to stop that and to rescue this pipeline, so precious, so essential to continue to grow, and to say bye-bye together with Olivier and Guillaume also to the tech bro culture. So we are glad to have you today for this panel. And today's topic is about supporting women in tech when you are a C-level man. As we all know, men are the most represented demography in tech, and we need to change and really to have this perspective, to have more allies, and to speak about their views on the diversity and inclusion topic. And to animate this panel, we gathered Olivier Bonnet, who is the CTO of BlaBlaCar. Hello, Olivier. And Guillaume. Hello, hello. And Guillaume Maron, co-founder and VP engineering at Dashlane. Hello, Guillaume. Hello. I will give a little bit of your background, but of course you will explain a little bit more after during the panel. So Olivier has worked at Apple for over 10 years and is now at BlaBlaCar, and he manages a team of 200 engineers across Paris, Moscow, and Kiev. And Guillaume co-founded Dashlane a little over like 10 years ago, right after graduating from an engineering degree. The engineering team grew from him to over 100 people, and his goal is to build a sustainable company based on a strong human values and continuous learning. Both of them are going to share their experience, their views on the topic of diversity and inclusion in tech and in the broader way with a focus on women. And I will start the conversation. So thank you so much for being with us today. You know all that you can ask questions in the Q&A, so in the chat. I will pick that question or during the panel or after the panel, depending. We have like a conversation with Olivier and Guillaume now, but you can ask when you want. Feel free and feel welcome to do that. So first of all, Olivier and Guillaume, why this topic needs to be addressed also by men CTOs or men C-level in IT organization?
So, well, I mean, I think the topic needs to be addressed by as many people as possible, and that's why on my side I just want to thanks 15 Tech and thanks Alice, Caroline, and Morgan for inviting us there, because I think it's a really great opportunity to have this discussion. Yeah, as kind of an introduction, I'd like to share a few thoughts. one is that I think, like Olivier, I'm not an example of diversity in tech. I'm a white male with a computer science degree, so I kind of check all the usual boxes in a sense. To me, it's important for two reasons. One is that I think it has to be a group decision, a group discussion. I think it's very important. And the other one is that, well, I'm not a woman. I'm not from a background that is less represented in tech, and I'm very happy to actually discuss about that so I can learn. I think everything is about sharing and learning. To me, those are the two reasons. So one ask I would have for anyone there is that because learning is always a first step, if I say something that you don't agree with or you think is wrong, please really don't hesitate. There is a chat. Don't hesitate to reach out and comment during the discussion, or to reach out afterwards over email, over LinkedIn, or over Twitter. Yeah.
You're muted, Caroline.
I'm muted. So it was like about, do you want to share your point of view?
Yeah, so I think Guillaume covered the important parts. I think the way I look at it and why I think it's important for us to be part of that conversation is it's a systemic problem. There's not like one button we could press and it would solve everything. Otherwise, like we probably would have found it and press it at that point. And in many of the discussions I had on that topic, I think it became clear that having allies that can kind of like relay the message, can help like the diversity and inclusion message is key to changing step by step the system. So always happy to kind of be able to help with the voice I can have. And again, as Guillaume said, like I certainly not an example in diversity in terms of like just my profile but again, like step one is is self-awareness. So happy to start with that and then like maybe use as much as I can my powers and my voice to help everyone realizes that there's a problem and that together we can fix it and we can address it step by step.
Olivier, you talk about self-awareness, and I think it's quite important because you can stay white male in this industry without you see the problem. So perhaps we can go through how did you become aware of the absence of women? It was like soon since school. So how it's happened really?
I think for me it's been a step-by-step process. I know that there was one haha moment or like, oh my god, this is terrible. I think and it started pretty early because like doing a class préparatoire in France and a computer science degree, like there was already a diversity problem there, both like men-women diversity problem, but also like just a more general diversity problem in terms of like a background, what have your parents done in terms of studies, what kind of degree they have, extra. Like it's a very general problem, and it's pretty obvious. I think in France in our class prépa system. So I think that was step one. I think for a long time then, like as an engineer at Apple, I didn't feel that much that as a problem. Maybe part of that was like I spent quite some time in the US, and so as a French person there, I was part of a minority, and so it didn't feel that way. Like I saw kind of like, okay, what it means to be for some aspect in not part of the dominant group. I think the third step for me was coming back to France and becoming a father of two daughters. And again, like this is a different perspective, but it's like, okay, what image do we project on young girls? Like how do we talk to them? Like how do we encourage them to take risks, to participate in some activities and not others, extra? So like kind of like reflecting on that as a parent, as a father, I think made me way more aware of like, okay, those biases, because I saw like what kind of gift they were getting at their birthday parties and how they were different from the gifts that boys were getting extra. So like I think those were like, maybe some of those were maybe the haha moment of like, whoa, why is my daughter getting that kind of gifts when she invites her friends, and how can it be so different from the gifts that boys their age are getting? I think that was that was kind of striking.
We often say that men become feminists when they have like a daughter, and especially after 10. So I think it's a moment of realization that we need to do something different for them. Guillaume, do you want to tell something about it?
Well, I think it's similar, because again I think we had a very similar at least start with class préparatoire and school in France. So yeah, well, the first thing is that we started Dashlane out of school with people from Central, and so there were not many women at Central, obviously, but even less within the computer science track, like very few. So the three people, the three of us that came up with the idea, we ended up being all men. I don't know if it was a bias or if it was just randomness because of just so few women, but well, that's where we started at least. And it's, to me, it's very hard to say when I started to think about it. I only have one child, and he's a boy, so and he's only 15 months, so I've been less confronted to those things, Olivier. But yeah, I think in the first years of the companies and years, like many years, you are very focused on we were only focused on going fast, on building the company, on surviving. And so the truth is that we were not really thinking about such topics. We were not thinking about management. We were not thinking about many things. We were just thinking about coding, building a product, and that's all. Yeah, so it's not clear when it came on our radar. But so we hired our first women quite early in 2011. We were like 10 people at the time. So I think we were lucky to have her and then to have more women. To me, that there are kind of two moments. Well, the first one is at school, where of course you are confronted to that because you just see that they are only men, but you are not really sure, I guess, what to do of it. And I think another time is much later, like in like a few years ago, when we added a people function at Dashlane, and yeah, that they helped us to build, to scale the culture, a culture we will be, I guess, proud of. And they started to do a lot about diversity in general, and I think that's where it kind of struck me, like I saw the difference of before, after, and all the things they did, and this is why I was like, okay, we can definitely do more. Yeah.
And I think we have an interesting question from Sarah. Looking back at your engineering school, do you know now retrospectively remember some behaviors which were are not like welcoming for women? Were you really aware of them at the moment? Not only the lack of women, but perhaps some behavior like positive or even like negative discrimination against women. So when we are talking with a lot of women, like we were only 5% in engineering school, your life is like not so easy peasy. So do you have like any memories about that, or not at all?
Well, I do, but they are not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know if it's not welcoming, but I mean, for sure, a group of people where only 5% are women, I think is bound to be a bit strange. I'm not sure exactly how to answer that question in detail, because
she was like at the same school, not so between 2014 and 17, and she definitely have noticed many things in my so in her years. So between so perhaps it's a conversation that you can have perhaps after about the memories that Sarah had, and perhaps just to realize, and even for young generation, we can assist, but you have no memories about that.
Well, I guess the one thing I can say is that because of the big gap that there is between 95% and 5%, and even 5%, it's sometimes less. I guess the interaction are just not balanced. So I'm not sure of a specific moment I want to share, but it's more a general feeling that it's just something is off. Like when you have such an imbalance proportion, it's just not balanced, and then of course it creates many different things. I'm not sure if it is welcoming for women or not. I would guess not, but I've never really discussed this specific topic, so I wouldn't like to take a position on something I've not personally lived. But yeah, the feeling I have is unbalanced. Yeah, it's something that is not balanced, and that just doesn't feel right. But yeah, it's hard to really put words on that, beyond that.
Okay. So we have a question from Christelle, and it was like my second question, so it's perfect timing. So Christelle is saying, so what are the problems to not have like women in tech in your team, and if you want like the concrete problems about not having women in teams, and if you want to reformulate it in a more positive way, what would be the benefits to count more women in tech in companies? What are the concrete benefits of having more, and what are the problem when you don't have?
I think the one of the benefit that I remember my teams as often as I can is like, as engineers, we need to understand our users, and 50% of our users are women, and so if you have like a very strong bias, again, like women, men is one of them, but there might be other, like if everyone lives in Paris but very few of your users are actually in Paris, like you are going to at some point bake those biases in your product one way or another. So that's one. I think there's a like, okay, empathy for the user, like how do we make sure that we keep we stay connected to our users. And then I think there's and again, like this is true for all kinds of diversity, but like a team that's more diverse will be more innovative, will be more creative, will come up with better solutions, extra. And so I think that's what's at stake here. It's also a question of like high performing teams are not like clones of each other. Like you need to have like a diversity of perspective, a diversity of point of views. You need to have those conversations happen. Otherwise, you just have a huge blind spot, and you might not. Again, like I think part of the problem here is like you might not even realize that. You might be completely blinded, and you might feel like, oh, this is going super fast. We're all always super aligned, and so we can take decisions super quickly. Sure, maybe, but I think there's a long-term cost in that superficial alignment that's important to keep in mind.
Guillaume, do you want to add something about that?
Yeah, I really like the user point of view point. I think it's really important. I actually didn't thought about this one, but yeah, I think it's a critical one. So yeah, I guess on my side, it has been very difficult in the past for me to see where we get benefit from having more diversity, or where we have a problem from lack of diversity, either gender or other diversity. And yeah, I think it's because the link is not always easy to see, and that's like with the awareness. It's not always easy to be aware, and that's I think why it is such a difficult topic, because it's hard to be aware, it's hard to see the link. The one thing I would say to start with is that in general, I do think that more diversity is globally beneficial for many different things. I think groups are just more efficient, but it's hard for me to back that up with any concrete experience. And I'm sure I guess there might be studies on that, but I don't know them.
Yeah.
There is one thing, one interesting angle to me is really about recruiting and retaining the best talents, and I think that's where I've seen the most of direct impact that I was able to link back to having women in the team. Like BlaBlaCar, we want to always look for the most talented developers, and we will often fight for the same talents, I guess. And when we have women candidates, we need them to see that there are already women there, and that it's an environment that they will want to work, and they can be happy, and they can succeed in, and they can be a manager, a leader, and so on. And so, yeah, it would have been much easier if one of our co-founders was a woman, for sure, but it was not the case. And yeah, so that's why I was very happy to have women initially joining, because I think I think they helped attracting more great women. So globally, yeah, if you don't have diversity, then it will be difficult to hire. And sometimes we actually propose women to interview to meet with other women if they feel they need it, so they can have their own evaluation of that, and they don't take our word for it. Because of course, in the interview process, we also end up with often many men interviewing, because, well, we are more men than women. And there is a very concrete example we worked on very early regarding the lack of diversity in hiring that I want to share today. It's not about women, but it's about working under pressure. And in the early days, I think most of the developers, or at least I can say for the founders, we were at ease with working under pressure. I can even say that we liked it. Like, I really like working under pressure. It's something I thrive under. And we were having our interviews as a result very stressful, and with a very high rhythm and so on. And at some point, one developer told us, like, that's broken, because you have a bias and you only recruit people who are at ease with pressure. But, well, you know that you are not supposed to be under pressure all the time. Like, you are supposed to be able to do your work normally, and sometimes you have pressure, but you should not be 100% of the time under pressure. So you prevent yourself from hiring from a large bucket, which is everyone not being at ease with working under pressure. And so because of that, we really rework our recruitment process to make sure that we would put a focus to release the pressure as much as we can, because interviewing is always very stressful, I believe. So yeah, that's one thing that is very concrete. And yeah, last thing is because of the learning and the awareness, I think it's beyond recruiting. When you go back to retaining, I think it's very hard to create an inclusive and supporting culture if you don't have enough diversity. Because if you don't have women in the management layer, for instance, it's very hard to know if we are. It will be very hard to create an environment where we actually can retain those great engineers, because they might not be comfortable, they might not be happy, and that is very hard for us to know, because we don't have the same perspective. So
yeah, and I think it's quite important, and we'll come back like in a few seconds about how many women do you have in your team, and what are you doing internally. So we heard about the recruitment process, but I think something super important what you say. I think more women is more efficiency, because like we are 52% of humanity. So if you're like BlaBlaCar and Taking a Car, we are like basically 50% of your user. If you have like no woman in your team, it's like no efficiency, and you can't like continue like that and to become the best. And we know the number about McKinsey, the most performant company. And we saw like Sarah share a link for the productivity, for the creativity. It's important to have like more gender balanced team. And it's important also for the global intellectual quotient. It's proof when we have like a gender balanced team, it's become better, because just we are thinking with all the point of view. And I think there is like a lot of studies about that, and that's really clear about just on the point of the performance. It's a necessity, even for you, Dashlane, for if you want to buy, there is a lot of buyers who are women now. And so that's important to have this this point of view. So we'll come down into what did you did internally to change the situation, to work on this lack of diversity and lack of women in tech in your team. Perhaps, did you know the ratio of female engineer, or so engineering and perhaps product together? So do you know the number, the percentage?
On engineering, for us, it's 25% of women in engineering. I don't have the number for product and engineering. But I think it will be fairly the same. First of all, because well, there is much more in the engineering department than in product, and also because we have a lot of women in the product department actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are at 25%. I think for the company it's like 30%, something like that.
Right. So 25 is like the average of the industry. And for you, Olivier, do you know the number, the ratio?
Yeah, so actually we did a lot of work to try and to raise. We started from like, I think when I joined BlaBlaCar, we're around like 7% in the engineering only team. In the I know the number with the product team, it's probably higher because we have a more balanced product team. And today we're more around like the 15%, again, like engineering only. And even though like that's progress, like that's not progress I'm satisfied with. Like we certainly need to keep pushing to continue raising that percentage. And interestingly, we at some point, like early on, we had some women candidates like just telling us like no, like asking us for that percentage. It's like, no, sorry, I'm not going to enter your interview process if that percentage is so low. And I think this was also kind of a wake-up call for us of like, to what you were saying, Guillaume, of like, this at some point this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of like, if you're not putting enough energy into fixing the problem, then just the problem will keep getting worse and worse. And so yeah, I think this was one of those wake-up calls. Like no, like we need to be more proactive. We need to communicate around this, and we need to put real resources behind this, whether in terms of like communication internally, externally, in terms of like how we source our candidates, how we interview them, how we track performance then of all the engineers during their time at BlaBlaCar, extra, like really looking at all the steps, all the entire employee life cycle, and really looking hard at like, okay, what would it take and what can we do at each of those steps to make for a more welcoming environment to address that problem really in a systemic way.
Can you detail a little bit more about perhaps concrete? So
yeah.
We heard about Guillaume, about recruitment process, but concretely, so how did you start? When you saw the problem, so what did you did concretely about HR, recruitment, sourcing, okay, communication, training? Can you give like concrete example about what you did, and perhaps if you see the result after?
Yeah.
Not concretely,
so
one day, but just the investment that it took, and perhaps how many results did you see after that?
Yeah. So I can give many small examples, and then we can deep dive in some of them if people are interested. But it's like talking about it internally and saying like, okay, this is a problem we're interested in fixing, and so that was kind of like one of the steps we took. Talking about it externally and like kind of raising awareness on some of the talents we had, and so we were a sponsor of the European Women in Tech event in Amsterdam a couple of years ago. We hosted a number of events back when we could host events, real events. And then it was a lot about like, so reviewing our job descriptions and making sure that the vocabulary and the way we describe the positions was neutral and was not creating an imbalance. It was about like how do we source and like onboarding and training the recruiters on like going out and trying to find those diverse talents. It's about like also training the interviewing teams, and again, like we all have our biases. Step one is being self-aware and being aware of those biases, and so I think it's super important for the interviewing teams to be aware of that, because yes, otherwise there's a clear risk that they will be choosing and favoring profiles that are like them. Then if I keep going in turn, like while during the time the person is at the company, like we push a lot on soft skills and what it meant to evaluate soft skills performance in our yearly reviews, and making sure that again, like you were talking about EQ before, and like making sure that, especially in the engineering department, which I think is, again, like there's a natural bias to like look at hard skills, look at metrics, and just look at that and miss a lot of the positive impact that someone can have through like building strong relationship, positive teamwork, extra. And so making sure we looked at the whole spectrum and not just those hard skills. Like all of those, and again, like it's not like one of them is going to fix everything, but I think it's super important that that we push on all of those.
Really clear. Thank you very much, Olivier. And Guillaume, do you want to tell a bit more about what you are doing internally and perhaps some results?
Yeah, well, I could say same as Olivier at a high level. I think we not I mean, not surprisingly, I think we work on the same topics. I've tried to organize like what we do into bucket, because I like bucket and organize things. So basically, there is one bucket that is really about mentoring and inspiring. So what we do today is part of it, and helping people at Dashlane, especially women, to get mentors so they can continue to grow in managerial and leadership position. The second bucket, which is very related, is learning, sharing, and educating. So here I could list a lot of things like participating to meetups, other things related to diversity in general, like celebrating Black Month's history, sharing our diversity index in France. Something very important is training about inclusive language that we do, that is part of the onboarding now. Celebrating Women's Day. So all of those things about learning, sharing, I think is something you need to do constantly. Maybe the most important, I mean, it's hard to sort them, but where it starts is with recruitment. So here, same as Olivier, we try to work a lot on recruitment to be as inclusive as possible. So for our French and our Lisbon office, French and Portuguese are not mandatory. So that's one way also of having diversity. We have people in the French office that don't speak French. Of course, using inclusiveness in the language, we use a tool that is called Gender Decoder that help us actually measuring that. Also having fewer requirements, as fewer as possible, because it will block some people that maybe could actually be very good. So be very mindful of what we put as requirement is really what we actually need, not just something we would love to, because then it blocks things. And another thing, I mean, like you said, Olivier, is how we train people and how we have a structured interview process. So everything we can do to remove biases. I think I have a very structured interview process with clear objectives and clear skills that we are looking for. Will push people to evaluate on that and not on their gut feeling, which I guess have more biases than clear objectives. And the last thing we try to do, I think, is something I've seen in the chat, is make sure that parenting is not an obstacle to career development and everything around work-life balance. So it's not just about women; it's also about men. But I think it's very important. So we try to do things. Recently, we've put actually the paternity leave to 1 month, supporting the Parental Act. We try to have mother rooms in our offices when it's possible. Some daycare sponsoring in Paris. That's also very important for people. Some child sick days. I mean, many things like that help us being more inclusive by not putting a group of people, in this case parents, outside of the team. And if you want, I can, yeah, go ahead.
No, I had an actual an interesting story to share about, like, so you were mentioning parenting, and a while ago, one of my colleagues, like Amélie, and she was VP of marketing at the time, and she shared essentially that me putting in my public calendar, the calendar that's shared with the entire company, that on specific days, like, they were blocked and it was like marked like kids time. That had helped her a lot, like, just assume that it was okay, and that she could, like, it was okay to make that public. And yes, it's okay to block the time after 6 on those days extra, because you have kids and you have you also have a life outside of work. And it's one of those things that when I did it, it was not a political gesture. I was not trying to make a point. It was quite natural for me, but her noticing it and noticing that it gave her, like, strength and trust that it was possible, made me realize that there was a problem, because me as a father, it was obvious that I was going to take some time off, and that some time in the week I had to be available for my kids to get them out of school, etc. But for her it was not, and again, like, I think this is one of those where, like, as a white male, I can be an ally and I can help kind of, like, change the culture and change the system. And so, yeah, I think I was mentioning haha moments earlier before. I think this was one of them. Like, okay, interesting. I can play that role too.
And that's great, because that was one of the first questions that we want to ask, because the first question that every woman are receiving is, how did you manage with work-life balance and your career? So, and I want to know exactly, because you put that in your agenda, but how did you manage really? So, because that question is not only for women. So you take time, and I think it's quite cool to just tell it supernaturally, but that's not the case of all founder and manager. And I think it's quite important, really important to hear, and not only asking, come and say that. Great. Perhaps we have, like, before starting the question session, just if you have, like, one challenge now to solve, because you are on the way to make equality and more gender equality and diversity in your company. What is one challenge that you can really that you want to solve now, and perhaps for 2021?
Yeah. So maybe I'd like to share one success and one challenge, because also success are good to share, and I always like to try to be positive. Because yeah, it's always very hard to measure a success when you do the recruitment pipeline. Like, do you have enough diversity or not? Like, how do you set a goal is very hard. But to me, it really comes down to like, what are the things that happen that you are proud of. And one example I wanted to share is few years, 2 years ago, we were looking for a backend engineer manager for 7 dev team that had always been a team of only men, boss managers and developers. And the role was open for 1 year because we wanted to find the right person, and also maybe we were a bit slow in recruiting, I don't know. But what I was really proud of is that we ended up recruiting a woman who had a small managerial experience. She had like a bit less than a year. She wanted to grow as a manager. And initially, she had a political science degree. So she was a self-taught engineer. And I've seen some discussion in the chat on this topic of the background. And she had 5 years of software engineer experience. And so I think that everything that we've put in place in the recruitment process was one thing that allowed us to identify her as the right woman for the job. And one thing she told us, she told me a few days ago when I was talking with her about that, is that from her perspective, the culture was critical there. And from her perspective, people at Dashlane were able to evaluate her without bias on her gender or her background, because they were open-minded. So yeah, just quoting her. And yeah, now she led the team for a year. She managed engineer that had way significant longer experience than her, and she switched to leading another team after that because she wanted to continue to grow on her leadership skills, and they were a better team, a better fit for her into pursuing that direction. So yeah, just wanted to share that story because I think it's really important to share success stories of women in tech, but not only tech, but in the management layer, which some usually we have there is even fewer in the management layer.
That's
and yeah, for improvement, I have plenty of things, but if I would share one on my side, because we are running out of time, it would be really about evaluating. I mean, learning and evaluating is learning how we continue to learn, and that's a never-ending process. And it's really about evaluating. And as an engineer, I like to have measures for everything, and it's a topic where it's very difficult to measure because it's even difficult to set goals. But yeah, I would love maybe to do more listening tours to hear about women and men also, to hear about how can women feel more comfortable in the company, what are their struggles to thrive, but also about men, about like are they comfortable engaging on this topic? Do they need more training or more help? Because one thing I've noted that is I think very important is, as an engineer, I don't like talking about things I don't master. And so, for instance, for me, this exercise is very interesting because usually my way of doing things is I study for a lot of time, and then when I know things or I think I know enough, then I talk. And I think here for men it can be difficult so to engage on that topic, and it creates a separation, a gap. And so helping also men to learn on this so they feel comfortable enough to engage on this topic, I think is very important, because this is what will create the dynamic of solving that problem all together and not as two separated groups.
Totally. Olivier, one success, one challenge, short, because I want to ask like some questions after.
Success is challenge on my side are going to look very similar to Guillaume. I think on the success side, so we hired a handful of like very talented women in engineering management positions, and I want to do more of that in 2021, and I would like to have a more diverse staff. And so when we are opening these days like VP engineering positions, like I very much would want to have, again, like it could diversity in those roles. It could be a woman-men diversity. It could be a French international diversity. It could be, but certainly like try and use those new openings to bring in diversity and at all layers in the engineering organization, I think is key. And I think it's an accelerator for then many other changes in terms of like what kind of discussions are happening, like how do we make sure the culture continues to be welcoming and friendly for all types of profiles, etc.
So that's really good news. We hope to see you soon on 15 Tech. I think it could be a great time to really expose like VP engineering position. That's exactly the kind of position that we want to offer for the community. Okay, so I will start the Q&A. Some question was like already asked during the conversation. So I have like one from Christelle. Do many in interview, do women in interviews show less confidence and don't play their skills compared to men? And if yes, how are you working on this?
Well, it's very hard to measure. Yeah, how do you measure confidence? And how do you measure if people don't play their skills? Is I mean, as for me, I think it's very difficult to answer this question. I can say what we try to do to make people comfortable, because I think it's really related to my point of stress during the interviews. Is what we do in general at Dashlane is we try to build the interview process so it's not like a fight, or it's not like something that is stressful, or at least we try, but we try to really explain to candidates what we will do, what we will evaluate, to be as welcoming as possible, and as I don't know if friendly is the right term, but to explain that the interview process is a two-way process. For instance, that's often how I start personal interviews, or something I touch on the beginning of the interviews, that it's a two-way process, and so it should be as stressful for us than it is for them, and it should be as less stressful as possible. So I think that can help, but I don't know if women are less confident or don't play their skills.
And Olivier, do you want to?
I think there are studies that show that women, for instance, like don't apply for jobs unless they feel they're like 100% confident, while men will just like put their resume in even if they feel they're not fully even if they feel they don't have the skills. So I think that's a proven fact. One thing that we've been discussing, and one of the things typically that companies can do to help at that stage is, for instance, like always give a call back when you have a woman that applies for a job, even if looking at her resume, like you might feel that she's not the perfect candidate, and maybe there are more compelling resumes coming from men, but like go the extra mile, go the next step to make sure that you're not putting aside a resume that might actually be super interesting, and a profile that might actually be as talented and as skilled as other men resumes, but not as self-confident. So I think that's one of the things that I've seen a company do that I find super interesting, because yes, there's like, okay, what's the extra mile, and make sure that we give their fair chance to everyone.
And a complementary question that we have from Stephanie. Because of bias, women may have more atypical paths. For example, arriving in the field of programming late, 30 years old, not getting out the right university education, stopping for 2 years to take care of children. Women do not necessarily have the expected path. Should we select on diplomas on the path, which is not equal according to one's skin color, gender, and social background? So it's like only looking on diplomas and resume, or just accepting that we can like be different and arriving from different background. I say that because we have like a lot of women in UK, France, even Dublin, asking her, saying, okay, I stopped 2 years and I have like terrible interview. People are asking why, or people like changing. So I'm going to tech. So we are calling women to come to tech, and then that's not the typical background, and so they are not hired for now. So perhaps you have like I don't know if you have any process, if you have like any things to add about that. I think it's really, really an important topic, and we have.
Well, I mean, on our side for the diplomas part, it's the answer is very simple. Is no, we should not select on diploma. So I think it's simple, and the way we did it was, I guess, twofold. First, initially, we were just not doing it. I cannot say why. I mean, we were just 15 people, and we were just not caring as much on diploma, but more about skills. And I don't know. Maybe we were just lucky to do the right thing. I don't know on that. But then later, it comes down to now how you build the requirement. So, for instance, I actually checked a few days ago, and I didn't found in our job offer. I think that, or I hope at least, that none of them have computer science degree in the requirement, because this is not a requirement, and this is something that maybe is helpful, but actually I don't really care. Like if you have an experience and you are able to pass the technical test, then I'm fine. So I think not having it in the requirement is I think the first step that is very important.
And Olivier, do you want to add something, or just for me? it's something important too. But we'll talk after. Yeah.
No, I agree that, and again, like I see that as part of the diversity, like diversity of like education, diversity of backgrounds. I think, as Guillaume said, like step one is dropping entirely the requirement of like, hey, you need to have an engineering degree to apply for this job. I think that's step one, but that's not enough, because then like you still have kind of the biases and that I've seen even in my teams of like, if you have two profiles, one that I call the plug and play profile, like the person has an engineering degree, he knows like the language, the framework, the tooling we use, and you can have them like sit at their desk and in a couple of weeks just like fully onboarded and writing code. And on comparing that to more diverse profile, like I think there's a tendency to like just choose the comfort zone and stay in the, okay, like we'll go with the candidate we know they've done the same, like they have the same engineering degree as we do, so extra, and like and those I think those unconscious biases, or sometimes conscious, but are more interesting to and important to deep dive on, like, okay, what is the risk we're taking? How do we, and again, like this goes back to like, what is the interview process we built so that we don't just default to evaluating hard skills, because that's easy. Like every engineer, you put two engineers in the room, like that's probably what they will be evaluating each other on, like, okay, do you know how to do this? Like, what's the answer to this computer science exercise extra? And so like I think there is a responsibility to train the interview panel so that on okay, like what are the soft skills we're looking for and how do you evaluate them? Like this is a skill. Like good interview is a skill, and again, so if you don't spend time training your interview panel, then you garbage in, garbage out. Like you get what you deserve in terms of having like choosing the wrong candidates for the wrong reasons.
Chloe sharing your announce and showing that's important to say that you are really saying that you want more diversity and inclusion in your job announce. And for me, the last issue that we have, and perhaps especially in Europe, it's at the junior level. So I said a lot of women are joining tech now, really, and because the government is saying, companies saying that it's a place to be. So I think one moment they're just joining, perhaps later, but they are joining. But a lot of them are saying that no company are recruiting for now when you are going out of school or after less than 1 year of experience. And I want to have your point of view about that, because Guillaume, you have like 200 people in your team, and you, Olivier, perhaps less 100. Do you have any process to make them grow, really? So someone with 6 to 1 years of code after, do you have any possibility to create like an internal university, train them really? Are you doing that or not? Or that's not possible at your stage?
No. So we are taking like students, alternants, interns, extra, and I think the goal for us is then to be able to retain those people and make sure that they stay with us in the long run. And so yes, I think what you mentioned in terms of like internal training, internal mobility is something I've been pushing a lot in my teams, like making sure people can go and bring their expertise to different teams, and maybe after 18 months or 2 years in the team, like make sure they get they see and they have opportunities to move around. And I think that's key to retaining people in the long run, making sure we challenge them and we help them grow throughout their career. I think you need to build the entire environment, and that both from okay, like what, how do I train, recruit, how do I train the managers so that those people that might have less experience are feeling welcome, can grow extra. what do you put in place on the people side to again like follow the progress of those people, etc. So again, like I think this is an interesting dimension and one that's super promising. And again, like we should look at it as a systemic thing. Like how do we make our internal culture, our environment more welcoming there.
So we have two more questions, but this is the end of the panel. So one is from Sarah, asking why men are taking risks as an engineering and building company and not so much women. But I don't know if you are like the best to answer to that question.
I don't know. Maybe there are studies on that, but I really don't have an answer for this question. I'm sorry.
Because you came directly to build your company, engineering and just building, and we don't do that so much for women. So okay. And the last one was, and Clio said, so what about hiring on soft skills only? Only soft skills. Is that possible?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but it made me think about something that we have tried to do in the past, and also it links back to the junior is that technical skill is something that like you know C++, but then you need to do JavaScript, and so like what's the point of evaluating someone on C++? And you don't want to limit yourself. Like if you are Node.js and someone is used to code on the backend in Python, you don't want to prevent yourself from hiring from this pool. And so one thing we've tried to do, and that also applies to junior and to maybe how we avoid evaluating the wrong things, is we try to build the interview on the technical side to evaluate the learning abilities of people versus their at one time technical knowledge. Of course, sometimes you also need to include one-time technical knowledge. If you have someone who is a senior developer for 8 years and is not able to, talk about their technology, then it's an issue. But the more important is like how people can learn and can grow, because if you change your tech stack, if there is a change in the company, you need to have people who are able to learn. And I think that's also how we can build something that is sustainable for recruiting and retaining juniors, as you were saying, Olivier. Is how do we evaluate their capacity to grow? Because of course they are fresh out of school, so they cannot be expected to know as much as someone coding for 3 years full time.
Yeah.
But on soft skills only, I don't know. I never tried that. I think it will be a very interesting experiment, at least, for sure.
Chloe is saying that's something should try, and perhaps not putting junior position and asking like 2+ years of experience, and that's really the issue that we are seeing everywhere. So don't say junior, or say perhaps baby level. I don't know, like entry level. I don't know, but the junior and 2 years is like something that we are really facing every day.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's for your hiring team. I think it could be you want to learn, and I think it's a great insight.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Olivier and Guillaume, for this really really natural conversation, really transparent conversation together. We know that you want to learn, and so I think it's quite important to be exposed to a woman, like can really expose what they are feeling, and you saw that there is some differences in the perception, sometimes at school and after. And so we really enjoy, and we want to have like more inclusivity. And so we need to be all together. It's a systemic problem that's not come only from men or women, it's all together. And that's, I think it's a positive message of this panel, to do that and to be ally. Thank you very much. I keep you like 1 minute with me, and just to say to you all that we will switch to make the debrief in the session. So 20 people can join me. We'll debrief the session. And if you want to do like only one-on-one matching peers, you need to use the networking tool on the left. And so it's time to say bye-bye, Olivier and Guillaume. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thanks for the invite.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
I will cut my camera right now. And I will stop the diffusion. Bye-bye.